So here we are on the Women's Power Hour show, and joining me today is Margaret Ward-Martin, who is a psychotherapist and founder of the Grace Project. Margaret, it is absolutely a joy and a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, Yvonne. Thank you, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for giving me this platform. Brilliant.
Oh, my pleasure, because I just want to point out that the conversation that we're going to have today is a much needed one, and it's something that I'm sure many other people have read things about but are not really clear. Very much like myself when I keep on hearing this whole topic around narcissism coming up. But before we get into that, it would be really lovely for the listeners to just find out a little bit more about you, Margaret, a little bit about your career journey and kind of what led you to what you're doing now.
Thank you, Yvonne. I said to you before, I'm old, so I've done a lot of things, but the best job in the world is being mum. I've got two wonderful sons, and they're all grown up now and making their own way in the world. But I was a teacher, and I taught psychology for many years, and that was a fantastic privilege and honor for me to have the children in my life that I taught. And towards the end of my teaching career, I decided to train as a therapist. So I work part-time and trained as a therapist, and that's what I've been doing for the last few years when I left teaching. And before that, I did lots of other jobs, as you do. So worked at the American Embassy, the Japanese Embassy, other bits and pieces, all of which gave me a lot of lived experience, really, to bring to my work today.
Fantastic. And isn't it wonderful? I think we kind of build these careers, we do all these different things, sometimes without really knowing how they're going to show up later on in life, but all the skills and things that we get from them that we can then use.
And the people I've met, you would never have known. I remember things from 30, 40 years ago, it's incredible, all of which in the work I do today have relevance.
Amazing stuff. So let's then talk a little bit about what you are doing now. So you're a psychotherapist and you are the founder of the Grace Project. First of all, can I ask you to clarify exactly what a psychotherapist does?
So I'm a qualified and trained counselor and therapist. I work with people with mental health challenges. I work with couples, and I can work with long or short term. So somebody may come with a pressing problem, with a crisis, so I can work with them for 8 to 12 weeks. Or if there's deeper issues, and I suppose if I practice ethically in this moment, I need to give a trigger warning that some of the things I may say today are maybe difficult for people listening. So I work with people recovering from abuse. They may not have even realized it's abuse, addiction, phobias, obsessive compulsive behaviors. So I can work short term if it's an immediate pressing problem, or a long term mental health issue. So that might be several years with working with a client.
Always good to know. And so with that, you also founded the Grace Project. So can you now just share a bit about what that is, what it is that actually encompasses?
So my work is extraordinary in the sense it's never what it seems. So I've been working with clients, the privilege of working with clients for years, and they may present with a mental health issue, an eating disorder or addiction or phobia or depression or anxiety. But many of the people I worked with had other issues, the layers upon layers upon layers. And it seemed to me that often they were in relationships that were destructive. So I didn't feel qualified to go there. So I decided to defer to greater wisdom and access colleagues in the States particularly. And what I was finding is that there's a very specific, really malevolent form of abuse called narcissistic abuse. And this is a very damaging and malignant form of abuse, but it led to people to act out. So they would drink, or they may go to the doctor and be diagnosed and be on medication. But actually what was behind it was what we uncovered in our therapy. So I just knew that this needed to be discussed more, and that's what we've talked about before, that how come people don't know about it? Well, it's not easily identifiable. It's not easily recognizable, although in in 2015, the coercive control criminality was recognized. So it's a part of that.
Right.
I call it the twin, the evil twin of narcissistic abuse is the coercive control legal element, and that people can get help from police or the legal system to protect them.
And there lies the topic that we're really going to kind of talk about, is understanding what it really means, when we talk about narcissists and that behavior. Let's just take a short break, Margaret, and then we'll come back and have a look at that.
Thank you, Yvonne.
We are back in the studio with Margaret Ward-Martin, and Margaret is a psychotherapist and she is the founder of the Grace Project. She has just taken some time to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her own background and the type of work that she does. And part of that is helping people who have been in, what's the best word, relationships that have proven to be something quite different from what they thought they were.
Yeah.
And the word narcissist comes into that. Now, I have to say, Margaret, I've read 2, 3, 4 different types of articles relatively recently around it. And I remember coming away thinking, I kind of get it, but I'm still not 100% sure. It's not really that clear. And so my question to you is, we hear the word, but what does it mean? And how can we recognize it in the different relationships that we have, be that partners, siblings, parents, workplace?
Brilliant question. Really, really powerful question. So I think that was, if I just mentioned that the reason I started the Grace Project, the website, is to put information into the public domain so that people can educate themselves. So what we know from narcissistic abuse is there's a cycle. So it usually starts with idealization, and then the devaluing, and then the discarding. So if I, for example, look at a partnership, so it will be very intense, it's very loving, the right words are being said, you're special, you're different, and you get caught up. And then at some point, it's, oh, well, you didn't do that well enough, or you don't look great today. And then it's the low level disrespect.
Yes.
And then it becomes really quite hideous, that it's name calling, quite abusive language, possible physical abuse, fiscal abuse, so that they may be asking for money, or that you're paying for, or the survivor is paying for the abuser. And then it usually, and this is why it's a pattern, there's a discarding. So once the abuser has had what they need from you, they discard and they replace. In the meantime, I don't like to use the word victim. When you're in it, it's probably victim. When you're out of it, you're surviving it. But recognizing that they are changing and they're feeling sick in themselves. They don't have confidence. The people I work with generally speak about not having the confidence they did, and they're accomplished. They go into these relationships accomplished, really quite able, usually successful financially, and then they come out less than. They are diminished, they're demeaned, they're disrespected, they're very often poorer. And so they come to therapy needing help with alcohol, or needing help with some anxiety or depression. Those who are in it recognize it, which is what the Grace Project is about. People are reading it and thinking, I didn't realize that was abuse.
Yeah, it's intriguing, because I think there are so many people, I'm not going to say just women, but people who probably have those types of relationships around them, not necessarily a partnership, because I know that when we spoke before, you said it could be family, it could be siblings, it could be
anybody,
and it could be anyone. And so that one, being able to identify it, and then how do you get away from that?
That's right. I mean, I think that's a brilliant point, Yvonne. It can be a parent, and that's tragic. To have someone revisit their relationship with their parent and realize that it was abusive is very poignant work. Because what do? They want this person to be part of their lives, or they need that person in their lives, or they want, but that's very hard work. And it can be so-called friends, but people can be, we use the word toxic, or we hear it now.
Yes.
But there are people that you come away just feeling a little bit sick in the stomach. I talk about this as one of the symptoms of the abuse, whether it be a partner or a parent or an acquaintance or a colleague. You just, the survivor feels a bit sick after any encounter. It's a nausea, and they feel less than and diminished. But getting away from it really is, first of all, educating, which is why I am so grateful to you for opening this conversation. If you begin the conversation, then let's see where it goes. Awareness is key to this.
Yes. Awareness
is key. And then the more people educate themselves, and I've got a few resources on my website, but there are so many. There is so much knowledge around this by people who've, like me, have done the deep dive.
Yes.
There is, once you start knowing, you can't unknow. And then it's finding the way to connect with people like me, or the website, or people like you, or other support groups where people just say, can we just talk? Can we continue this conversation? Yeah. And if there's a need, if there's a safeguarding issue, then it's obviously people have to get away from that abuser.
Absolutely. And it's absolutely spot on. I think it's one of those topics that is so uncomfortable that people are afraid to open the door on it. So we don't hear loads and loads of conversations. As I said, I've seen more things popping up more recently, but if we don't have the conversations, nothing changes, right? So having these talks, knowing that there are qualified people like yourself that people can talk to is like the stepping stone.
I think I really appreciate that subtlety in what you've just said, that a therapist cannot make decisions, but what we do is walk the walk. So it's helping the person through the realization that they're in a relationship that is less than respectful, and then they can make the decisions when it's right. So it might be that they have to sort out a community, because one of the objectives of a narcissistic abuser is to isolate their victim.
Yes.
So there may not be, they may have isolated the person or alienated them from family or friends or colleagues. So it has to be an awareness that things aren't necessarily easy to just, it's not black or white. We have to take our time. We have to make sure the person's safe.
Yes.
And then make the decision when they are ready. Because it's some of the symptoms, and this is the work done by a colleague of mine in the States, is advocating for narcissistic abuse syndrome to be recognized. Because when people realize that a lot of their lives is not what it seems, they are in shock. And those symptoms resemble post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
So that shock phase is hard to negotiate without specialist help. But it's a waiting game.
Yes.
They're working through the shock, and then the survivor, in order to be empowered, makes decisions in their own time. But they can be complicated and they can be expensive, and it could involve, I think the last post I wrote talked about, I can't, maybe it was the one before, but talking about the decisions. Once you made a decision, it could be an expensive divorce, or not talking to a parent.
Yeah.
Or siblings alienating. These are not inconsequential decisions.
Absolutely. And I guess to some degree, that's probably why even if people are aware to some degree that this is not right, that they almost like put it off. It's like, because they know the huge impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Massive.
Absolutely. Is what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is why education, this is what's unique about this type of therapy, is that the difference is educating the client first.
Yes. Yes.
That's the key component of the therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, Margaret, let's have another little break. And when we come back, I just want to talk about, you know, how a narcissistic relationship would impact potentially somebody's ability to self-care. We are back. Women's Power Hour show. We have the lovely Margaret Ward-Martin with us, who is has a specialism in narcissistic abuse recovery, and we have been talking about what that might look like, how you may be able to recognize it, and Margaret's also been sharing about the help that somebody who is in those types of situations, those types of relationships, may need to reach out for help. And some of that help is just actually being educated, understanding exactly what it is that they're in. And of course, with my passion around self-care, which is very much about well-being, and of course this would definitely have an impact, the question I wanted to ask you, Margaret, was how might a narcissistic relationship affect a person's ability to self-care?
Again, a really powerful question. I suppose in a narcissistically abusive relationship, if the narcissistic abuser has done their best to be their worst, the person is left feeling as if they don't deserve care. So something like gaslighting, which is doubting their reality. And so it might sound like, I'll be back later than I said. And they said, well, I didn't know you were going out. And they said, yes, I told you. Why are you forgetting things? So the person is doubting their sanity.
Yes.
Or they'd say something like, I told you so. And it's like, no, you didn't. Yes, I did. You're forgetting things. So the person is usually reeling and feeling quite unwell. Or the person is not worthy of looking after themselves, not worthy of the truth. Or if it has got really quite disrespectful and abusive, they may be called unattractive or much worse. I'm not going to use the language that I've heard from clients, but it's like, why bother? So they come to therapy, or I can find them in therapy saying, you know, life's not worth living, because they feel so diminished or so demeaned, or they're actually acting out in such a way that they feel ashamed of. So if they're drinking perhaps too much alcohol or doing something that they feel ashamed of, they're not feeling worthy of caring for themselves. And that's part of the abuse. But they can't, it's with narcissistic abuse, it's joining the dots up backwards.
Yes. Yeah.
Because without exception, the men and women, and it is men, women, and of all ages and stages and backgrounds, without exception, they are incredible people. Without exception. And they have felt diminished to the point of self-harming to a degree that is very distressing to themselves, their children, their families, their colleagues, and it's a dreadful form of abuse.
So when somebody comes to you, you know, what's sort of, and I know each person is different, but you know, what is the sort of basic process that you would take someone through if they were suddenly aware that, oh my goodness, this is just not right and I need to do something about it, or I'm ready to do something about it?
That's how we get them back to a state of feeling good about themselves, giving the power back. What are they ready to do when they're ready to do it? So they may not be able to leave a relationship or a job. So, for example, if the narcissist is a boss, it might not be practical. but you can start putting things into place, like seeing the behavior for what it is.
Yes.
It's not about the survivor. The survivor says, I'm fabulous. The survivor knows their worth. This is on them. He or she, if it's a partner, this is on them. I am not ugly. I'm not unattractive. I am not fat, thin, whatever nastiness has been fired at them, whatever kind of verbal, emotional, psychological ammunition has been discharged, they can just give it back. This is not about that person. So the awareness is part of it, and you can see the change.
Yes.
So trying to extract themselves from this situation is one part of the self-care, and understanding the abuse is not about them.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And I also have found, and this is what's, as I said, it's such a privilege doing what I'm doing. The people I work with are highly accomplished, so they were very attractive. They were shiny, bright, and so the narcissist will be attracted to them, and they benefited. The narcissist looked good because of the other person. So what our work is getting them back to a place where they are their shiny best, and then some, because they've got the wisdom. And nobody will take it from them this time, because very often their weak spot, if there is one, is being kind and caring and trusting.
Yes. And I mean, and it's almost terrible to be able to name those things and call them weak spots, because that's actually beautiful human nature.
That's right. And that's what the narcissist sees them as. And I think another of the posts I wrote, that they do see being a compassionate person as weakness. And I said, well, and this is the work that we said, that is to be the most accomplished person, to be compassionate, to be trusting, to be giving. And if somebody only exploited that, that's on them.
Absolutely.
And so, as I said, we're getting back to a place where they understand that not everybody has their sense of humanity.
Indeed. Yeah. Very powerful. Okay, Margaret, we're going to have one more break. Then we come back. I just want to talk a little bit more about how people may be able to contact you or find out more and get the support that they need.
Thank you.
Well, we are back with Margaret Ward-Martin, still very much with us. And Margaret has been very kind in kind of sharing and opening up this topic about narcissists and behaviors, how that can affect people, how we can identify it and see and understand, because I thought this was really interesting that I got from you, Margaret, was that this is not just about partner relationships. It can be siblings, parents, teachers, whatever. And so being able to understand this could be showing up in any area of your life. One, the awareness. Two, the education, trying to, finding out what you can about it, and then seeking the help that you need. So important. Now, this is a really sensitive topic. And I feel it's important to say that, because if somebody's listening and they're suddenly like bubbling away thinking, oh my goodness, I know what they're talking about. I see it now. Where can they get support, and what support is out there for them, including yours, of course, Margaret?
Yeah. First thing, they're not alone. They're part of an extensive international community, and I think it's really important to know that this is a subtle, malignant, and deeply unpleasant form of abuse. So knowing that they're part of a community, spoken or unspoken, or identified or not, is really important. So my website that I built with incredible people that I work with, they know who they are, but we work anonymously apart from me for safeguarding, is the Grace Project. And on that, it's got some information about narcissistic abuse, and it's just free. Just learn.
Yes.
So the education of it is completely free. So understand what narcissistic abuse is. On the resources pages, there are other resources, websites, videos, books to read. Again, obviously they will cost, but you can get a lot for free. So I think that's the first port of call, is learning more. Then trying to get therapy if you can afford it. Again, there's a lot that's free. And, you know, one of my hopes is that there would be local support groups or recovery groups. That's something I work privately in town and Skype and in London. And I have Skype sessions. So I work privately on a sliding scale fee, and other colleagues do as well. But I think that the hope is that we start to have local community support groups under the banner of the Grace Project or others, where survivors come together, discuss ways of disengaging with the abuser and rebuilding, because it's about recovery.
Yes.
And there's a very, very unpleasant legacy from narcissistic abuse, which is the rumination, where you overthink, or somebody can overthink what's happened to them, and they can stay stuck. And that's, as I say to clients, that, you know, you're finishing off the job the abuser started.
Yeah.
So part of why we work as specialists is that that's part of the abuse. So we learn to give that back. It happens organically. It's hard to describe, but it does. It lifts. The grip is lessened and the cloud lifts.
Fantastic.
So yes, so the resources are there, and it really is up to anybody who needs to know more to go as deep as they can, as quickly as they can, in their own time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's www.thegraceproject.co.uk.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that's a place to go to really start educating yourself. As Margaret said, most of that stuff, it's free. So go and tap in. And I think, you know, even if you're not in that situation, if you wanted to just gain the education, so like for me, for somebody like myself, I think it's important. It's important to understand, because as a coach, there's bound to be people that will come into my space that may well need a really different type of help. So I think it's really important that we use those resources and educate ourselves for our well-being and for the well-being of others. Now, Margaret, I know I also asked you about self-care tips, and actually you came up with a self-care package, which I love.
I did.
There's no one thing, there's a multiple of things
No.
doing. So could you share those with the listeners?
Well, no, I think you did. You challenged me, Yvonne, and it was one of the, okay, where to start. So, and it really did. I had to have a long and hard think about this. I think as a woman, as a mum, as a professional, I think learning to say no is really important. I find it so hard, and I didn't realize it was an option for so many years. So if somebody said, would you do overtime? Yes. Would you do this? Yes. I wouldn't even I wouldn't think. No. So I think, and I think it's not just women. I think generally speaking, if you've been brought up or you're habitually say yes, revisit that. You can actually say no. I need a night in. I need Netflix and whatever. I just need some peace and quiet. But learning to say no, I think, is a discipline. So that was the first thing I thought about. And then turn the phone off. So many people, or don't have the phone within reach. Have a discipline around being accessible all the time. And again, I think that's so that we can replenish, we can recover. Otherwise, we're 24/7. Yeah. Our phones can go off all the time, and somebody will have a need. And the most important thing, I think, is just sometimes to rest. But that's me. It's, this is just what I've learned. I agree. And then the other thing I thought about is how I've got, or where I've gotten my strength from. And I have good friends, a few really good friends, and They are wise, capable, loving, giving, and then there's unconditional support. And I think that's something to have a few good friends.
Yes.
And that takes investment and time, but the quality of those friendships are important. And water finds its own level.
Yeah.
You know, you'll know the person who gives and you come away from, you know, the people who you give and you come away from feeling energized. So good friends, and then eliminate the words should, must, and can't from vocabulary, which I think is who wrote the rule book?
Exactly.
Who came up with all these shoulds? And I think maybe it starts at school. I don't know when it starts. It probably starts at the home, but it's reinforced as we go through life. And there's these expectations. Please, let's tear up that rule book and go for just higher order living. And that's simplistic and maybe a bit glib, but it is possible. I think we've learned that and had to look at that through lockdown.
Yes, definitely.
That everything's changed. So that I think that's really important. And then this is big. My final is the shame. So many of us live in shame or feel we have things we've done of which we are ashamed. So living a shame-free life would be my wish for everyone.
That's huge.
Shame is put into us. Guilt is good because it you know, sometimes we do things that maybe we shouldn't, so we have a bit of guilt, a nice little healthy. Shame is about the self. Shame is about us not being good enough, and that's generally put into us by other people. So give it back.
Yes, I like that. Give it back. And I think because also it's about understanding life is a journey. There is this thing about perfection. We always talk about perfect. What does that even mean? You know, live life, know that there will be highs and lows. Sometimes you're going to get things right the way that you want them to be, and sometimes they won't be. You know, sometimes you'll upset people and sometimes you'll fill people with joy. But being able to understand that and then using the language that supports, you know, if you feel sorry about something, being able to express that full and wholeheartedly, but not carry shame or not let the guilt keep on building until shame is that thing that you end up feeling. Yeah, so powerful. And I love the thing you said about turning off the phone, because it's so simple and so few people do it. Literally my phone goes off at 9 o'clock at night and it doesn't go back on until about 7:30 in the morning.
So it can be done.
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, what a fantastic list to finish on, Margaret. And I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your words of wisdom, for giving us some insights into this deeply troubling topic, but one that we need to be talking about and that we need to be addressing. So I'm just so grateful for you to be able to come on and share your expertise and for setting up the Grace Project. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you for your courage, because without you, this conversation wouldn't be had. So all credit to you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Okay, so listeners, again, that website, www.thegraceproject.co.uk, just to help you get informed. And then if you need to reach out for any help, that there are contact details there as well. Once again, thank you so much, Margaret.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone. Thank you.